to another edition of Studio DOHC. My name is Chad Valenzuela. I'm the Administrative Coordinator for Family Hospice Care here in Palm Springs, California. We're a sister agency to Desert Oasis Healthcare and have been since 2006. And we really look forward to bringing you some really fun and interesting information today. It's all about death doulaship. Many people don't know what death doulas are. And there's probably a lot of misconceptions in our community about what they are, what they may be able to do for you and your family in those times of need. So today I have three distinguished doulas, starting with Lauren Stambaugh. And then we have Kirsten Garcia, she goes by Kiki, and Glendon Geikie, a MSW and retired psychotherapist. So really, we're just going to talk a little bit about doulaship today and your experiences, gives and takes of what each of you have experienced through not only being doulas, but maybe even some opportunities to share some ways that people in our community can use not only volunteer services that are available with Family Hospice Care, but the services of doulaship. So I don't know if any of you want to start off with anything important or any favorite story of yours from any of your doula experiences.
I'll tell one story, Chad. This was with a man. He was in the process of dying, and we did a ritual around forgiveness. He had been angry at his mother for many, many, many years because of family events. And we did a ritual around forgiveness, and he was able to, I could see it on his face as we went through the ritual, his face changed, and you could see the anger kind of let go and disappear for him. But that also involved his sister, who he still was angry at. And when he was near time to die, he instructed me to not let his sister in the house. And that's one of the things we do as doulas is to work on family issues, and especially near the end of life, to try to undo those type of things, because he had not forgiven her and couldn't forgive her. He went so far to say, Glenn, if she comes here, call the police and do not let her in my house. I did not want to leave things like that with him and have him pass with that. So we started making some phone calls. I got a hold of some other people in the family. They started calling. And over a period of time, we were able to get them to talk to each other. And he forgave her and she forgave him so that she, in fact, could come and say goodbye to him. And it was really touching to see the two of them together after years and years of estrangement.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
I think that's really powerful that you talk about forgiveness, because so often, we all think about hospice as this deathbed experience. But it really isn't. Hospice is a much longer experience, as doulaship certainly can be. On that note, is are death doulas only for that moment of death, or does that relationship really happen for a much longer period of time?
I think it's way before, it can start way before the actual transition to death. But it has a lot to do with planning. I think that's one of the biggest things that doulas are looking to do is to take the fear away and, make this something that's like birth, treasured and intimate and calming and, with the family or with just the person that's dying if they're alone. So it it works with hospice. It's kind of a bridge with hospice. Um, it As doulas, we can fill in those gaps. Hospice is medical. We are non-medical. We're more emotional and spiritual type of support. So while there's misconceptions with hospice and being a death doula, I think they work well together, along with the social workers, along with the chaplains. I think all together, all those little cracks are filled in as far as what the family and what the patient needs.
Sure. And I think you also bring up a very important thing about creating that connection through support, because families are often so busy either caretaking for their loved one, or trying to continue their own lives. Life doesn't stop. We're still going to work. We're still having to take kids to school or do the laundry or whatever your daily minutia is. Um, so, and the reason I say all that is that there sometimes is a cost involved. But from what I understand, the doulas that work with family hospice care, there's not a cost to the family or to the patient.
Correct.
Okay. And so, again, those supportive roles clearly take a lot of time, which shows your devotion to what you guys do as doulas. What are some of those, whether they be tasks or supportive roles that you play for the family or for the patient?
Mm. I think caregiver respite is a big one. Giving people time to kind of do the things they need to do or not do anything, take a little break. Self-care for them, we can help people with legacy planning, um, affairs if they would like us to, getting their paperwork in order. Um, you can even do like what you want to give away to people before you pass, so people aren't like having to guess after your loved one's gone who gets what. Like it would be more like a gift situation. I've seen that before. Um, kind of stuff like that, bedside planning, what you want your who you want to be there at your bedside when you're getting near passing, what you want it to look like, smell like, lights on, lights off, all those important little details that could make the passing a little more memorable.
Yeah, and I think I want to off that. A lot of times with families, it's very emotional. It's very, devastating. And a lot of times families, I've had this happen to me where families come from out of state or somewhere else, and they want to take over and they want to call the shots for how that person's going to die when you've already discussed. So you're kind of like the buffer, and this is what they want,
Right.
and this is who they want to be there. And I think the forgiving thing helps because there's so much family drama a lot of times that and you don't know, and it just all of a sudden is there. So I think that that we are definitely a doula with the client and then also the family. Very important.
Right. The client or the patient is always going to be number one. And I think that's an important point to make. And of course, having choice and being in control. And that's one of the human truths, right? Is that we want to be in control of our lives. And unfortunately, at the end of life, when our time is coming near, that control is being taken away from you. And so being able to make these choices that you enumerated are so important to giving some control back and giving some solace in the end that a person is having it the way they want it.
It's their
Right.
safe space.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Lauren, you mentioned legacy planning. Can any of you tell me a little bit more about legacy planning?
I think a big thing with legacy planning is photographs, going through like maybe they're planning on having an after death ceremony or an after death celebration, and getting those things in order for that. Getting photo albums put together, having the patient, write letters if they want to help write letters to people that to say goodbye or to give things away. Do you have any?
Yeah, and for me, it's also how the person wants to be remembered after they have passed. How do they want to be remembered? How do they want people to remember them? And how is the family going to remember them and honor them? And it was a hospice nurse here some time ago who talked about when her mother died. Her mother had the habit of taking a box of chocolates, taking one, taking a bite, and putting it back in the box. And that was who their mom was. And they decided that every year on the date, the anniversary of her death, they would get a box of chocolate, they would get together, and each one would take one, take a bite, and put it back, and then talk about their mom. And so her legacy was to take a bite of chocolate, and the family was going to remember her, the bite of chocolate. And they'll always have that now, the rest of their lives.
And that's a neat story, because I think it also reminds people that the loved one typically wants everyone to slow down and, for that moment, remember them, and whatever their legacy may be, say, remember, whether it be remember me or remember those that are around you, remember those that you love. And that kind of is a neat segue into grief. And a big question that often happens is, do doulas work with grief surrounding end-of-life issues?
I believe
Yep.
before, during, and after.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's our responsibility. Hopefully the family is open to it. I'm dealing with a gentleman right now that his husband died, and he was alone with him. He didn't call me, and he didn't. It wasn't expected. He was going to do the medical aid in dying, and the husband died before he could do it, and so I'm checking in on with him all the time, just because he's alone now. So trying to get him set up with a grief group at the center here in Palm Springs. So yeah, I think it's our responsibility to especially check in, and you don't have to do it every day, but at least for the first 6 months, just because grief comes in waves. You just don't know when it's going to hit. So.
Well, again, that's something that's neat that doulas do, is that you create that truly personable or personal connection with, whether it be the caregiver or the whatever unit is around the patient, and provide that support long after the death has occurred. As part of the hospice benefit, Family Hospice Care does a similar thing where we reach out through our social workers and our bereavement counselors for 13 months post-death. So it's important that, because death really has so many facets to it, that it's nice that there's the doula side, but also the business or medical care side of hospice, doing those follow-ups, because grief happens in so many different ways, and it's different for every person, really. And, one of the best analogies that I ever heard was that after, when a death occurs, it's like when you throw a pebble into a pond, and the ripples make these little waves, right? And over time, the ripples get less and less, and they spread out a little bit more. But that doesn't mean that ripple doesn't hit the side of the lake and bounce back. And maybe months, if not years later, do you get that little ripple again, and all of a sudden your boat is shaken. And it's so amazing how these interactions work for us in so many different ways.
And you see that a lot, Chad, anniversary times, first Christmas, first birthday, first wedding anniversary, all those anniversaries come up, and then back comes the grief and the feelings. Yes. They're there forever.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
Now, is grief the same as debriefing? What is debriefing?
Debriefing comes up after the person has passed, and we don't know if it's unique for everybody how the family's going to deal with it, how they want it to be. What's the funeral going to be like? Is it going to be a funeral, a celebration of life? However, it's planned to afterwards sit down with the family and basically say, how did it go for you? Because we don't want people to be saying, well, I wish we had, or we should have, or why didn't we, to try and process those issues so that they can just grieve the loss and not have to be grieving guilt over we didn't do this, we didn't do that. To process those and try to make them okay so that they can just focus on grief for the one that they've lost, the loved one. But I think it's important to go over that with them because sometimes things happen during a funeral, during a celebration. That somebody says something that we all hope they would not have said, and that has to be processed so it doesn't stay there for months on end.
Right. And I think that really goes back to that original plan, because it's so unfortunate when a plan isn't created before death or before the process of death begins, because it's really becomes a scramble if you don't have your paperwork or a advance directive in place or a post in place. These are all very important conversations that you shouldn't only be having with your family, but with your family physician, and getting some of these things in order so that there aren't post-death arguments or needing to go into, I mean, it's a whole nother thing to go into the legality of probate and if things go to the state. So certainly making that plan beforehand creates a lot more peace within the family unit. And, it just really does speak to, again, what you guys do in allowing these conversations to happen more naturally. And when people are lucid and making decisions for themselves, right?
Yeah, like you said, the control. They have, it's the last thing they're going to have control of.
Right.
And why not make it the way they want it?
Absolutely. So speaking about having things the way you want to, do any of you have any other special stories or, a favorite, if you want to call it that? Because I know that, again, you kind of deal in the end of life, but that doesn't mean that there can't be happiness or smiles through the process. Are there any experiences that any of you would like to share?
I had one just recently, and it was with Family Hospice, and I was just a volunteer for this lady. She didn't ask me to be her doula or anything, but I would go and talk with her, and we talk about, what she wanted, how she wanted things to go for her, and she had two sons, and she did not want her sons to be there when she passed, and I didn't ask why. I figured she knows them better than I do. So the next week I went to see her, and her nurse was there, and he was scrambling on the phone trying to get a hold of the sons because she had just declined like overnight. And when I went in the room, I knew she was transitioning, so I knew it was coming soon. So I went and got my doula bag with like everybody knows, you have all your goodies in there, and my favorite thing, especially during a vigil, is music. Because a lot of times, they've got the oxygen machine on, things are noises, and I just think music just really calms the soul. So she had heard the nurse and I talking, and that one of the sons was on the way. And we got her nice and comfortable, and I put that it was kind of spa music or meditation music on, and she was gone because she knew her son was coming, and she didn't want him to be there. So she made that choice, and I'm so glad that she was able to go the way she wanted it, and not worry that that son was going to be, traumatized about it all. And I think that's what it was all about, was the coping. that she knew that they couldn't cope with it. So, but yeah, and so the nurse and I were there, and it was beautiful.
I can tell a medical aid in dying story.
Okay.
Uh, this man had chosen to do that, and we spent a lot of time deciding on the final day when he was going to take the medication, who was going to be there. And he had it worked out who was going to be in his bedroom, who could be in the living room, who could be in the kitchen. He knew what he wanted. And the day came, and he was a great fan of musicals, and he had a pretty good voice, I found out. And so he had people in the bedroom, and as sad as it was for the people there of watching him pass, just before he drank the medication, he sang The Impossible Dream, the song from Man from La Mancha. And he bellowed it out in the whole, and it made me cry, it made everybody cry, but he felt so good that he was singing this song that had been his favorite for most of his life. And it just made it beautiful. The ending was beautiful. Sad and tears, but beautiful at the same time.
Yeah. Going the way that he wanted to.
Yes.
Yeah. For anyone that isn't aware, Glenn was just speaking about medical aid in dying, also known in California as the End of Life Option Act. That is a California law that is available to all Californians, something that really is a deeper discussion, if that is a choice to anyone watching. But long story short, you need to be hospice appropriate, and you would need to speak with your nurse case manager, and then more information is given, and physicians need to be involved throughout the whole process, and it's a much deeper conversation that can certainly be had when and if it is an appropriate time to do that. But I just want to remind anyone that may be watching that as we are living here in California, it is you are protected by that law to have the End of Life Option Act. A little bit more actually, kind of thinking about the end of life. Hospice provides social workers and chaplains. Do you as doulas have a lot of interaction with the social workers and the chaplains, the spiritual counselors?
That's one of the problems, is hospice is really limited to the amount of time that they see patients. So we could actually see them, a lot more, and you kind of miss each other. I've seen a few while I've visited, and it's good conversation to talk about things as far as the patient or anything going on in the home that you're worried about, but I haven't been out with a chaplain yet. I haven't come into contact, but I'm sure you can work with them. I think it would be great.
Yes, I think it's vital
Yeah.
that we work with the hospice staff, that we're a supplement to the hospice staff. And sure, time is always hard, people are coming and going, and it's hard to sometimes make those things happen to get together. But we have to take responsibility to make that happen. So because the social worker may have set something up with the family or the patient, but needs some follow-up. It needs another 5 hours of time to make happen.
Right.
Well, we need to know that the social worker has done this. We need to work with the social worker to say, all right, we'll follow up what you've started here and build on it.
Right.
Maybe that's a good way to think of building on what the social worker and chaplain have.
Well, and as Kiki said, a supplement. And I think that it's so important that it's phrased as that, because, the hospice staff certainly has a limited amount of time. That they have their own patient panels, and we wish that we could provide more. What you provide is so vital and so beautiful in that your giving of your time. And again, as I've done in my past in teaching the language of caring, appreciating that you are so freely giving of your time, both as volunteers and as death doulas, is so immensely important. And again, I can't express as much gratitude as I feel that I should to each and every one of you for everything that you do. But know that I am, and the rest of the Family Hospice Care staff appreciate you all as well in creating that giving moment of time, and being present to those that we serve and those that are on our services. Again, I can't say thank you enough to each and every one of you. On that, I don't know if any of you have any thoughts on misconceptions. Any thoughts, like when you hear death doula? I mean, of course, anytime you hear death, and in our society, we generally have this negative connotation, and no one really is happy to hear that or wants to. But it's a discussion that needs to be had. I feel that we finally we're peeling the layers off of the taboo onion of
Correct.
death in America. But on that note, do you guys have any thoughts or clarifications as to what death doulas, how they may be misconceived in our society?
I think most people have heard of birth doulas, and that's looked upon. Birth as beautiful, and you get to choose the way that you want your baby to come into this world. You go, oh, I want a water birth, or I want a home birth. I want this, and we don't think of death as having those choices. And I think as death doulas, it's getting that word out there that you do, and let's talk about it. Like you said, let's not fear it anymore. Let's look at it, eye to eye. Let's look at it, because we're all going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And why not choose the way you want to go out? This is what I want it to look like. This is who I want it to be with. This is what I want. This is what I want to listen to. This, Lauren is into the different kinds of burials, like that are eco-friendly. So most people don't even know those choices are out there. So that it's just us getting that information out there. And I think the more it gets out there, the more people will be in search of it, instead of it just, learning on a podcast. It's going to be like a normal thing.
Right.
And that's what I want it to be, because I just truly think it's one of the most intimate, beautiful, sad, yes, but it just that's why I got into it. It just hits you, and it makes you feel good that you got to do that for that person.
I think also like the timing of when to bring us in. Like anytime I tell people I'm a death doula, they're like, well, I don't plan on dying anytime soon. And it's like, okay, well, it's kind of not what it's about. Like, we're trying to get in there before you plan on dying, apparently. But so we can set up this beautiful setting for the people and get all of your things in order and have time for forgiveness and writing letters. So, bringing us in early to build a relationship, which isn't always possible with people that come on hospice late. But, ideally we're getting in there a few months before to build that trust and relationship and help people make these plans and stuff like that. So
I like what you said, Chad, that we are a death avoidant society. My experience has been, if let's say somebody I don't know, or they ask me, what do you do? I say, I'm a death doula. That's probably the end of the conversation. And we'll move on to something else. And so I want to applaud Family Hospice for allowing us to be here, for allowing us to participate in the program, to make death the beautiful spiritual experience that it can be. And Kiki's right, sad, right? Loss is sadness, but it can still be a beautiful time in their life, a time of love, connection, meaning. And I really appreciate the opportunity Family Hospice is providing to have doulas be part of the team.
Yeah, no, it really is a beautiful teamwork. And some people may not know that part of the hospice qualification under Medicare law is that a physician needs to qualify that if the natural progress of a disease state would result in a life expectancy of less than 6 months. So that said, what you were talking about, Lauren, with coming on earlier, having months to plan this out is so important. So would you suggest that upon being qualified for hospice care or entering into any hospice program, that death doulas be offered just as a general offering? Just like spiritual care, family hospice care as part of Medicare law, we say, would you like a spiritual counselor? And people can say yes, no. They can say whatever. Do you have someone that can, speak to Jewish spirituality, or Christian or Catholic spirituality, or Muslim? We have each of those available. And so, on the flip side of that, would you find it important to offer the doulaship program to each of our entrants into hospice care?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Sooner the better.
Okay. If you could put a pinpoint on, and I'm betting that I'm going to get 3 different answers here. How, if you could say the exact or the best amount of time that I could spend with a patient and their family to create a good plan and to create a truly special process towards the end of a person's life, what would it be?
Yeah, Chad, you talking in terms of hours? How many hours is that? Or
No, like on a calendar. So I mean, because of course there's only 24 hours in a day, and we all, of course, continue our own lives during this process. But we also have to get through all of the, I hate saying it, but the business side of the process, because just because you sign a piece of paper today, signing your power of attorney, doesn't mean that it's active today. We have to make sure that we have the signature gets notarized. We have to make sure that it's recognized by the physician. I mean, there's pieces of the puzzle that sometimes can take a couple hours, a couple days, a couple of weeks, right? So, and this is why the plan is so important, because when you try to fit this all into that last week of life, when all of a sudden the patient may not be lucid, all of a sudden the family is scrambling to come in from different locations, whether it be, within the city, within the state, all over the world, right? It's not an efficient plan at that point, because everyone is scrambling to get that last moment with their loved one. So what I'm saying is, it's now December. We have a patient coming on to service now. If you could say, and again, there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's I wish that I had X number of days, weeks, months to help this family. What would it be?
3 months would be perfect for me. For me, that would give you plenty of time and to build that relationship that Lauren was talking about. So that there's the trust. They got to trust you, and I think that's a big problem with being a doula is the working with the family. It's not the patient, it's the family. And so when you have you've been working with this patient for months, and then all of a sudden the daughter comes in from Nebraska and she takes over everything. So those, I would say 3 months for me would be
minimum,
a
I feel like.
good amount of time. Enough amount of time.
Okay.
I wouldn't want less, but
Sure.
but it happens.
Depending on how much forgiveness is
Yeah.
needed. Maybe you need a little longer.
Yeah, right.
6 months
That's
to
Sure.
a year.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's I think it's akin to how organized that person is on all of their other items. I'm 45 and I have my estate plan in place. And before that, I had a living will. There are many people that when we go into their, whatever their family situation is, into their residence, they have nothing. Not even a signed document saying that, where any possession or what they want to, happen with their body after death. I mean, zero information. And that leaves our team, again, scrambling because we don't want it to be left up to other entities. Believe me, we love the state of California, but they are not necessarily the best at making decisions for you, me, and any loved one of ours, right? So creating those plans early and often is the best way to go.
I'd like to be involved right from the beginning, that they come on service.
Absolutely.
Because meet them, find out what circumstances are, and say, all right, let's start working on that right now, or we can wait a couple of months before we look at that. There may be nothing to do right in the beginning, but to meet, and so that they know who you are, so that when something does need to get addressed, they know who you are, they know how to get a hold of you. You're welcome into their home. So I would like to meet families as soon as possible and see what's going on.
So Lauren, a little bit earlier, you were talking about after death, that there's a few different options for the body after death. Most of us, of course, are probably pretty familiar with burial and cremation, but there are others.
There are others. Aquamation, which is water cremation. So instead of fire, they use water and like alkali solution. So it's like rapid decomposition over the course of 15, 16 hours. It has little to no emissions, so it's environmentally friendly, uses way less energy and fossil fuels than fire-based cremation. You get a little more of the remains back because it's not all burned up, for lack of a better term. And then there's human composting, which they're terming terramation now. So basically, your body gets turned back into soil, and your loved ones can take all the soil. They could take little bags of the soil. You can give them to your loved ones, or you can donate your soil to reforestation projects that the terramation facility works with. And then there's just straight natural burial, which is right into the ground, no caskets and concrete vaults and no embalming. So it's just your natural body going into the ground and decomposing naturally. So a little more friendlier on the planet, I would say. Yes. A lot of people don't think about, they recycle for their whole life. They drive an electric car. They do all these things, but they don't really think about how your death care options are impacting the environment. And we kind of need to start thinking about that a little bit. So,
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, Glenn, we were talking a little bit earlier about our society's fear of even the word death. But how would you say that doulaship is kind of bridging that gap, or what is the role of doula in creating a safe space around death?
I think one of the things is enabling us to talk about death again. But I think the bottom line is that death historically was a family event. A person died at home. The viewing was at home in the living room. The family took care of their loved one. And the funeral home industry took that over a period of time, and families kind of got divorced from the whole death procedure. And I think as death doulas, we can help bring part of that back to that it's a family event. Somebody in the family is dying. It's a family event. It's not a medical event. It's a time of love, connection, sharing, all those things. And I think death doulas can help bring that back to the family taking ownership of the death process.
Yeah, where it's not so medical, you know, it's all about comfort and being loved and being surrounded by the people who love you and going the way you want.
Yeah, and that's what interested me into hospice care in the beginning, was that I loved the idea of having this. I'm not going to fight death anymore.
Mhm.
And the thought that some people, will fight tooth and nail until the end, and they will have every procedure done, anything that can be done to me, I want done sort of attitude. And that's certainly, if that's your choice, by all means, let that be. Um, what I've always feared, in having been through the process of seeing some of my grandparents pass, was that they passed in the hospital, surrounded by beeping machines and, nurses and home health aides and doctors rushing from one patient to the other, not being truly able to give you that specialized personal time in the end. And if you were so lucky as to pass during visiting hours,
Yeah.
you got to be with your loved one.
Mm-hmm.
If not, so often you passed alone. And so my thought was always, I would far prefer to be surrounded by my family, by my loved ones, making it that personal, um, passing of my soul on to the next, wherever it may go. So, and that's what drew me into hospice and that mentality. And doulaship certainly, I think, is a handhold to that. One last question that I've been, kind of waiting on was, how long have each of you been death doulas?
Me about 1.5 years now.
Okay.
Mhm.
Right about 2 years.
8 years.
Did you need specialized education? What was the process to become a death doula?
There's certifications and there's all sorts of different certifications. It's not required by the state
Mm.
to have a certification yet. I think it's coming. But yeah, there's if you Google, death doula education, all sorts of certifications will come up. So I think all three of us went through the
Mhm.
yeah.
Maybe a very personal question, but what led each of you into death doulaship, wanting to become a doula? Was there singular events, or like me being drawn into hospice care? Was it, seeing, oh wow, that's not how I would choose to go, surrounded in a hospital situation. I'd much rather be at home.
Mhm.
Was there something that specifically brought each one of you to be a death doula?
For me, it was my great grandma who raised me. She was in a hospice in the end of her life. I was like 19, and she was super religious. And in the end, she was like really scared to die. And so that kind of got me thinking, like, well, if this very faithful woman is afraid to die, what does that mean for me? Because I don't identify for any religion, And then, like, some serious death anxiety in my 20s made me face death head on as a way to, like, deal with or investigate what was giving me anxiety around it. And then through that process, I found the death doula movement and Elua Arthur, who's the training I did. And um, just that helped me work through my anxieties. I was getting really depressed all the time. That all went away as soon as I really started doing the work to get through that stuff. And so for me, being a death doula, thinking about death all the time has really made me live more presently, more meaningfully. I think about my time a little differently because you realize you're not going to be here forever when you're working in this field. So being a doula has really helped me live my life more fully, I would say. And so I want to help others do the same.
I took care of my mom for 2 years while she battled cancer, and in the end, when she was told there was nothing else that they could do, we got on with hospice. And I'd never, I heard about hospice, but I'd never personally dealt with it. And it was just the most wonderful experience I had. I didn't think strangers could come into your house while your mom's dying and it would be a good experience, but it was. And it was comforting, and it was knowing that she was not in any pain. She was being taken care of, but we still had that time with her. And after that, I started volunteering. I think I had to wait a year, and then I started volunteering with a hospice company, and that's how I kind of started researching. I heard of a death doula, and I'm all like, "That's it." I had a calling to it. It just called to me, and did everything I could to find out about it, and was certified, and then moved to Palm Springs, and here we are.
For me, it was probably my volunteering for hospice that initially led me into it. As I was volunteering and being in people's homes, being with people, I kept feeling there's something more that can be done. I want to do more. I worked with people all my life professionally, and I thought I can give more. There's more of me to give. And that's what then led me to getting into being a doula. But I think I always remember my father's mother, my grandmother, who, for me, in my family bringing up, she was the only person that recognized me as a person. And when she died, I was in the military, could not come home, could not go to her funeral. And so I always think whenever I'm working with somebody or being with people, that I'm remembering her and doing what I couldn't do for her, and making sure that people recognize their loved ones and say what they need to say to them before they leave wherever they go after this journey.
And it's important that we use our own experiences to help others do it right. And in that, I mean, you guys are educators. You are assisting people through, very plausibly, some of the most difficult moments of their life, as one of their loved ones is passing and ending theirs. And so that thought of being able to either, it's kind of like a redo sometimes, and each of us can probably take singular moments from our own lives and say, if I could do it differently, I would have done it in this way or that way, right? And this being a way where we can handhold others, where you're kind of on a razor thin wire of doing it wrong and leading them to do it right. Because isn't that a great way to remember your loved one in saying, "Oh, I did it right."
And I think that's what it's all about, is that having a good death, and I think that's what we want to bring to the table, is letting people have that option of having a good death.
Yeah.
And it's hard to look at it that way, but it really, when you think about it, really isn't. It's having that death that you perceive in your head, and who you want there, and it's going to be sad, like we said, but it can also put so much love in your heart and a smile on your face in the end.
Absolutely.
And a beautiful experience.
Yes, so beautiful. Gosh.
Unless there's any other additions or thoughts, I again want to thank each and every one of you for joining me on Studio DOHC today. So to Lauren, Kiki, and Glenn, again, I appreciate your time so truly, and this information I truly hope will get out to our community and make what you do the importance known and the availability of it to be widespread, so that we have a greater understanding and make the thought of death much less a taboo in our society, so that we can all create our own final chapter and a fantastic ending to each one of our stories.